All right. Let us read this Sherman Alexie story. Hopefully by now you read the background information and so you've thought a little bit about that. Let's read the story. Although it was winter, the nearest ocean 400 miles away, and the tribal weathermen asleep because of boredom, a hurricane dropped from the sky in 1976 and fell so hard on the Spokane Indian Reservation that it knocked Victor from bed in his latest nightmare. It was January and Victor was 9 years old. He was sleeping in his bedroom in the basement of the HUD house when it happened. His mother and father were upstairs hosting the largest New Year's Eve party in tribal history when the winds increased and the first tree fell. God damn it, one Indian yelled at another as the argument began. You ain't shit, you fucking apple. Two Indians raged across the room at each other. One was tall and heavy, the other short, muscular, high pressure and low pressure fronts. The music was so loud that Victor could barely hear the voices as the two Indians escalated the argument into a fist fight. Soon, there were no voices to be heard, only guttural noises that could have been curses or wood breaking. Then the music stopped so suddenly, the silence frightened Victor. What the fuck's going on? Victor's father yelled, his voice coming quickly and with force. It shook the walls of the house. Adolf and Arnold are fighting again, Victor's mother said. Adolf and Arnold were her brothers, Victor's uncles. They always fought, had been fighting since the very beginning. Well then, tell them to get their goddamn ass out of my house, Victor's father yelled again, his decibel level rising to meet the tension in the house. They already left, Victor's mother said. They're fighting out in the yard. Victor heard this and ran to his window. He could see his uncles slugging each other with such force that they had to be in love. Strangers would never want to hurt each other that badly, which is an interesting thought, right? Strangers would never want to hurt each other like that. It's only when you know and love someone that you do. We're going to talk about that, so let's hold tight to that thought for a second. But it was strangely quiet, like Victor was watching a television show with the volume turned all the way down. He could hear the party upstairs move to the window, step into the front porch and to watch the battle. During other hurricanes broadcasts on the news, Victor had seen crazy people tie themselves to trees on the beach. Those people wanted to feel the force of the hurricane firsthand, wanted it to be like an amusement ride, but the thin ropes were broken and the people were broken. Sometimes the trees themselves were pulled from the ground and both the trees and the people tied to the trees were carried away. Standing at his window, watching his uncles grow bloody and tired, Victor pulled the strings of his pajama bottoms tighter. He squeezed his hand into fists and pressed his face tightly against the glass. They're going to kill each other, someone yelled from the upstairs window. Nobody disagreed and nobody moved to change the situation. Witnesses. They were all witnesses and nothing more. For hundreds of years, Indians were witnesses to crimes of an epic scale. Victor's uncles were in the midst of a misdemeanor that would remain one even if somebody was to die. One Indian killing another did not create a special kind of storm. This little kind of hurricane was generic. It didn't even deserve a name. Adolf soon had the best of Arnold, though, and was trying to drown him in the snow. Victor watched as his uncle held his other uncle down, saw the look of hate and love on his uncle's face and the terrified arms of his other uncle flailing uselessly, and then it was over. Adolf let Arnold loose, even pulled him to his feet, and they both stood facing each other. They started to yell again, unintelligible and unintelligent. The volume grew as other voices from the party upstairs were added. Victor could almost smell the sweat and whiskey and blood. Everybody was assessing the damage, considering options. Would the fight continue? Would it decrease in intensity until both uncles sat quietly in opposite corners, exhausted and ashamed? Could the Indian Health Service doctors fix the broken nose and sprained ankles? But there was other pain. Victor knew that. He stood at his window and touched his own body. His legs and his back hurt from a day of sledding. His head was a little sore from where he bumped into a door earlier in the week. One molar ached from the cavity. His chest throbbed with absence. Victor had seen the news footage of cities after hurricanes had passed by. Houses were flattened, their contents thrown in every direction, memories not destroyed, but forever changed and damaged. Which is worse? Victor wanted to know if memories of his personal hurricanes would be better if he could change them, or if he just forgot all of it. Victor had once seen a photograph of a car that a hurricane had picked up and carried for 5 miles before it fell into a house. Victor remembered everything exactly that way. On Christmas Eve when he was 5, Victor's father wept because he didn't have any money for gifts. Oh, there was a tree trimmed with ornaments, a few bulbs from the trading post, one string of lights, and photographs of the family with holes punched through the top, threaded with dental floss and hung from tiny branches. But there were no gifts, not one. We've got each other, Victor's mother said. But she knew it was just a dry recitation of the old Christmas movies they watched on television. It wasn't real. Victor watched his father cry huge, gasping tears, Indian tears. Victor imagined that his father's tears could have frozen solid in the severe reservation windows and shattered when they hit the floor, sent millions of icy knives through the air, each specific and beautiful, each dangerous and random. Victor imagined that he held an empty box beneath his father's eyes and collected the tears, held that box until it was full. Victor would wrap it in Sunday comics and give it to his mother. Just the week before, Victor had stood in the shallows of his father's doorway and watched as the men opened his wallet and shook his head. Empty. Victor watched his father put the empty wallet back in his pocket for a moment, then pull it out and open it again. Still empty. Victor watched his father repeat the ceremony again and again, as if the repetition itself could guarantee change, but it was always empty. During all these kinds of tiny storms, Victor's mother would rise with her medicine and magic. She would pull air down from empty cupboards and make fry bread. She would shake thick blankets free from old bandanas. She would comb Victor's braids into dreams. In those dreams, Victor and his parents would be sitting in Mother's Kitchen restaurant in Spokane, waiting out a storm, rain and lightning, unemployment and poverty, commodity flood, flash floods. Soup, Victor's father would always say. I want a bowl of soup. Mother's Kitchen was always warm in those dreams. There was always a good song in the jukebox, a song that Victor didn't really know, but he knew it was good. And he knew it was a song from his parents' youth. In those dreams, all was good. Sometimes, though, the dream became a nightmare, and Mother's Kitchen was out of soup, the jukebox only played country music, and the roof leaked. Rain fell like drums into buckets and pots and pans, set out to catch whatever they could. In those nightmares, Victor sat in his chair as rain fell drop by drop onto his head. In those nightmares, Victor felt his stomach ache with hunger. In fact, he felt his whole interior sway, nearly buckled and fall, gravity. Nothing for dinner except sleep. Gale and unsteady barometer. In other nightmares, in his everyday reality, Victor watched his father take a drink of vodka on a completely empty stomach. Victor would hear the near poison fall and hit flesh and blood, nerve and vein. Maybe it was like lightning tearing an old tree into half. Maybe it was like a wall of water or a reservation tsunami crashing into a small beach. Maybe it was like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Maybe it was all like that. Maybe. Maybe after he'd drink, Victor's father would breathe in deep and close his eyes, stretch and straighten his neck and back. During those long drinks, Victor's father wasn't shaped like a question mark. He looked more like an exclamation point. Some people liked the rain, but Victor hated it, really hated it. The damp, humidity, low clouds and lies, weathermen. When it was raining, Victor would apologize to everyone he talked to. Sorry about the weather, he would say. Once, Victor's cousins made him climb a tall tree during a rainstorm. The bark was slick, nearly impossible to hold on to, but Victor kept climbing. The branches kept most of the rain off him, but there were always sudden funnels of water that broke through, startling enough to make Victor lose his grip. Sudden rain like promises, like treaties, but Victor held on. There was so much that Victor feared, so much his intense imagination created. For years, Victor feared that he was going to drown while it was raining, so that even when he thrashed through the lake and opened his mouth to scream, he would taste even more water falling from the sky. Sometimes he was sure that he would fall from the top of the slide or from a swing, and a whirlpool would suddenly appear beneath him and carry him down to the earth, drown him at the core. And of course, Victor dreamed of whiskey, vodka, tequila, those fluids swallowing him just as easily as he swallowed them. When he was 5 years old, an old Indian man drowned in a mud puddle of the powwow, just passed out, and fell face down in the water collected in a tire track. Even at 5, Victor understood what that meant, how it defined nearly everything: fronts, highs and lows, thermals and undercurrents, tragedy. When the hurricane descended on the reservation in 1976, Victor was there to record it. If a video camera had been available then, Victor might have filmed it, but his memory was much more dependable. His uncles, Arnold and Adolf, gave up the fight, walked back into the house in the New Year's party, arms linked, forgiving each other. But the storm that had caused their momentary anger had not died. Instead, it moved from Indian to Indian, the party giving a specific painful memory. Victor's father remembered the time his own father was spit on as they waited for a bus in Spokane. Victor's mother remembered how the Indian Health Service doctor sterilized her moments after Victor was born. Adolf and Arnold were touched by memories of previous battles, storms that continually haunted their lives. When children grew up together in poverty, a bond is formed that is stronger than most anything. It's the same bond that causes so much pain. Adolf and Arnold reminded each other of their childhood, how they hid crackers in their shared bedrooms so they would have something to eat. Did you hide the crackers? Adolf asked his brother so many times that he still whispered that question in his sleep. Other Indians at the party remembered their own pain. This pain grew, expanded. One person lost her temper when she accidentally brushed the skin of another. The forecast was not good. Indians continued to drink harder and harder as if anticipating. There's a 50% chance of torrential rain, blizzard-like conditions, seismic activity. And there's a 60% chance, and 70, 80. Victor was back in his bed, lying flat and still, watching the ceiling lower with each step above. The ceiling lowered with the weight of each Indian's pain until it was just inches from Victor's nose. He wanted to scream, wanted to pretend it was just a nightmare or a game invented by his parents to help him sleep. The voices upstairs continued to grow, take shape, and fill space until Victor's room, the entire house, was consumed by the party. Until Victor crawled from his bed and went to find his parents. "Yay, little nephew," Adolf said as Victor stood alone in the corner. "Hello, uncle," Victor said and gave Adolf a hug, gagged at the smell. Alcohol and sweat, cigarettes and failure. "Where's my dad?" Victor asked. "Over there," Adolf said and waved his arm in the general direction of the kitchen. The house was not very large, but there were so many people and so much emotion filling the spaces that between people that it was like a maze for little Victor. No matter which way he turned, he could not find his father or mother. "Where are they?" he asked his Aunt Nezzie. "Who?" she asked. "Mom and Dad," Victor said, and Nezzie pointed toward the bedroom. Victor made his way through the crowd, hated his tears. He didn't hate the fear and pain that caused them. He expected that. What he hated was the way they felt against his cheeks, his chin, his skin as they made their way down his face. Victor cried until he found his parents alone, passed out in their bedroom in their bed in the back bedroom. Victor climbed up on the bed and lay down between them. His mother and father breathed deep, nearly choking alcoholic snores. They were sweating through the room, though the room was cold, and Victor thought the alcohol seeping through their skin might get him drunk, might help him sleep. He kissed his mother's neck, tasted the salt and whiskey. He kissed his father's forearm, tasted the cheap beer and smoke. Victor closed his eyes tightly. He said his prayers just in case his parents had been wrong about God all these years. He listened for hours to every little hurricane spun from the larger hurricane that battered the reservation. During that night, his Aunt Nezzie broke her arm when an unidentified Indian woman pushed her down the stairs. Eugene Boyd broke a door playing indoor basketball. Lester falls apart, passed out on top of the stove, and somebody turned the burners on high. James Many Horses sat in the corner and told so many bad jokes that 3 or 4 Indians threw him out the door into the snow. "How'd you get 100 Indians to yell, 'oh shit'?" James Many Horses asked as he sat in a drift in the front lawn. "Say bingo," James Many Horses answered himself when nobody in the party would. James didn't spend very much time alone in the snow. Soon Seymour and Lester were there too. Seymour was thrown out because he kept flirting with all the women. Lester was out there to cool off his burns. Soon everybody from the party was out on the lawn, dancing in the snow, fucking in the snow, fighting in the snow. Victor lay between his parents, his alcoholic and dreamless parents, his mother and father. Victor licked his index finger and raised it into the air to test the wind. Velocity, direction, sleep approaching. People outside it seemed so far away, so strange and imaginary. There was a downshift of emotion, tension seemed to wane. Victor put one hand on his mother's stomach and placed the other on his father's. There was enough hunger in both, enough movement, enough geography and history, enough of everything to destroy the reservation and leave only random debris and broken furniture. But it was over. Victor closed his eyes, fell asleep. It was over. The hurricane that fell out of the sky in 1976 left before sunrise, and all of the Indians, the eternal survivors, gathered to count their losses. So as we end, I must say again, there's a lot of language in this story, a lot of language that honestly makes me feel uncomfortable to read to a class. And yet I think we need to ask ourselves, why is this language in this story? Why did the author choose intentionally this language? So it's one of the things I want you to be thinking of. And the other is, what's the hurricane? What's this hurricane that won't go away? What's this hurricane that keeps visiting? Is it a literal hurricane? Is it a metaphorical hurricane? I want you to think about those two things. So you're going to dive a little bit more deeply into this story, then we're going to come back to it later. So thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. And here comes the end of the story. And good luck with the questions. You're going to move on to the questions now that are linked on the next couple slides. Let me know what questions you have about the story. I would love to talk it through with you if you're feeling confused. So shoot me an email if you're confused. Well done.